Previously on the top 25.
Well, I have to apologize a little bit for the different sound setup. Oh, hello, I am Viddy of Viddy's Gaming Videos, and welcome to the continuation of the post-commentary for the top 25 Game Showcase 2021. Wow, that was a mouthful of an intro, but not as much as the, idea I had here. Considering that the showcase is a three-part series, I thought I'd have a previously, a recap. Which also gives an opportunity for David Sedaris and others to also feature a bit more again as well, because as we will talk about maybe a bit later, maybe this episode, maybe the next one, well, not every person's game is featured. And no, I am not talking about Duke Nukem Forever. Thanks for that joke, Joker. So, before we get started talking about the actual games in this episode, games 15 to 6, yeah, that's right. Let's talk a bit about this montage idea here. First of all, the music used here is from, also, speaking of that Scream, the Uncharted joke, it's from the 1990 adventure game Countdown as well. I will have to talk about this game eventually because it's obscure, but anyway, the thought process behind editing this montage was mostly the same games, but differing ones to either tease the audience or to, or at least based on what games have been featured so far, because as you can probably tell, especially if you've watched the episodes, a few of the games in that montage are going to feature in this episode, and there'll be a few interesting games as well. But very quickly in regards to that, I want to thank you all so much. So yeah, the premiere live chat I remember was quite a fun time in episode 1, and talking about the games that were featured and also the live reactions as well. Also, it was good in this episode at least to skip the few introductions, so we get into the games more quickly. I did talk in the commentary last week about how I could have done part 0. So. Yeah, well, that's kind of true. So I was sort of saying in the last episode with Minecraft at number 25, I barely played it, whereas this one I played more as much as I could, which I'll talk about in a bit. And as I'm saying here, I only got one explanation for this game, which made for this section, the 15th game, being the hardest to edit. Yeah. Doing that or playing the actual game itself. Yes, this is a hard game, and it's mostly not surprising inclusion of Bloodborne, a Soulsborne game. And spoiler alert, that's not the only one we're going to see. Now, the reason that this was pretty hard to do was, on the top left there, all the people who put it in their list. I was hoping for more explanations for this game, but I only got one person, which meant that I had to do the majority of the writing here. And I was, sort of saying on my socials and stuff, come on, if anyone hasn't done their explanations or hasn't done explanations for all their games, please do it. I wasn't going to say, please do Bloodborne. And as time was getting on and I had to finish the final sound mix, and I was kind of like, well, if I'm going to have one day to vote into doing the Bloodborne section, I have to do it now. Which means I did have a bit more time to having to figure out how to, script, my bits, basically talk about the game, and eventually follow it up with Michael Mick's explanation. Also, I tried to have as much flexibility as I could, yet again, to try and see if I could complete Bloodborne, at least do most of it. I have explored further in Bloodborne since the showcase was completed, but with all the time in the world I could possibly try and fit in, I couldn't get that much further in Bloodborne, so I got some Snowman gameplay footage. Try not to spoil the game too much, because I didn't want to know what was ahead for me at the time. I will admit the Snowman gameplay, Bloodborne footage seems to be a bit lower quality there than the one I got off my PS4 there. But that's still the least of my worries. So the Bloodborne section really tired me out. But still, that does not necessarily matter in the grand scheme of things, as Bloodborne, and especially Michael Mick will confirm here, Bloodborne is a good game. And outside of watching people sort of talk about Dark Souls a bit, Bloodborne is technically my first Soulsborne game. And by gosh, what an introduction to the Soulsborne subgenre it was. I especially do like Bloodborne more so for its gothic undertones. I mean, nothing wrong with the mostly fantasy style, of Dark Souls and all that sort of thing here. Also, Eldritch Horrors, yeah, that's a thing for Bloodborne. So yeah, like Bloodborne was a great introduction to the Soulsborne alone, just for its gothic stuff. I'm kind of into that gothic stuff. Also, I thought this would be the best time to insert a Charlie segment, complete with Paw Patrol. This was a reference to Slap Enough DJ's streams back then. He did the Twitch stream of Paw Patrol, where there were surprisingly hard segments for a kid's game, and also he does references to Rage, which is actually a music videos TV show analysis, whatever thingy, that's actually broadcasted in Australia, so you can look up Rage or Rage's intro and stuff. But yeah, so I just thought that would be a good place to insert that segment. Yeah, this is takes me back to like when when I was getting to like towards the end of the deadline for getting all the game submissions. I was like, okay, well, let's get a better tally of what games are included. And when I saw Bloodborne and Dark Souls together, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to, for myself, probably discover 2 Soulsborne games. Although, to be fair, Dark Souls was going to get into a top 25 almost no matter what, but it was actually ranked lower than 14, until another last-minute list chose Dark Souls and got it up higher, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. It is right next to Bloodborne, and I think the live chat had a somewhat similar reaction to me. Oh, get Bloodborne and then Dark Souls? That's funny. 2 Soulsborne games in a row.
Followed by a PC version in 2012 and a multi-platform.
Also, the editing is similar here to Bloodborne, but at least there were more critiques. I got in as far as Dark Souls as I also could as well, and there's also footage from Snowman gameplay as a result. And I figured also some of the critiques were kind of shorter games, so I could talk about the story here as much as I could. Which Dark Souls does have an interesting story. With the dragons of the Age of Fire.
Darkness starts to take over, and humans start to succumb to an undead curse that gets worse for more.
Dark Souls I played not long after Bloodborne as well, and I mean I actually got to experience it after again seeing just little bits of them being played around the internet and stuff. And I think also a friend of mine also showed one of the early segments to me, being played on their computer, which you can show you can die a lot. Which also brings me to this moment here. I think in retrospect, I made this, dying over and over again montage a little bit too long. But it is true. Dark Souls is a hard game. Anyone who says, oh, I'm great at video games, this is no problem, you're lying.
Sometimes, and the sense of accomplishment you feel when first beating a boss is next level.
It is perhaps this level of difficulty that Dark Souls is notorious for.
Oh yes, the Snowman gameplay had the Onstein and Smar and the Capra Demon. I remember, quite a few early impressions videos of this game, especially for the Switch. People were like, wait, you have to do an exploit to beat the Capra Demon? Like, come on. But of course, yeah, there's me doing that gameplay there.
There is perhaps more to this game than that.
Dark Souls is the only.
Oh yes, I liked the Metroidvania discussion of Dark Souls here because it is true. Although to be fair, almost every Soulsborne game kind of does this, so I need to really surmise whether Dark Souls did it either differently or better. I will admit, maybe in the showcase sequel, maybe Dark Souls could be ranked higher, because there's more and more people playing the Soulsborne games, and I mean, its difficulty is the reason why it's not ranked in the top 10 necessarily, although Bloodborne and Dark Souls are ranked as fairly high as they are. Also, at the time here with Snowman gameplay, that boss right there, those sort of, I forget the name, anyway, the whole branches with the fire and stuff, is apparently considered a very weirdly cheap or oddly boss or something. I should have included something
The
else.
whole experience was epic, and the level design and combat.
Oh, the ending here, I really like. Have a look and listen. I thought that little music cue with the first bell being rung is one of my favourite editing moments in the showcase. And yes, spoiler alert, we don't have any Soulsborne games for 13.2.1, although to be fair, one or two other Soulsborne games did sort of get into the runner-up, which shows that, you know, the Soulsborne games are not going away anytime soon. But at least we can have something somewhat easier, which is the oldest game of the showcase, yeah, Super Mario Bros. 3. I mean, well, the oldest game of the top 25, so I'm sure there were games made prior to Mario 3 that had a good go against the top 25, but nope, this 80s game was the highest retro game, highest ranking retro game in the top 25, pretty much. And yeah, there's almost not much to say about Super Mario Bros. 3. It is simply a great game, and it's considered one of the greatest NES games as well. Now, at the time, I hadn't recorded any footage from the All-Stars version of Super Mario Bros. 3. I only had, from my backlog of footage, only the NES version, of course. So the Mario All-Stars footage comes again from Micanoid, also with his critique of the game as well.
As Ali Unger says, a large game that is also filled to the brim with neat stuff like the hidden.
Also, yeah, speaking of other footage, I also did include the instruction manual there because we had to talk about the story as well for Mario 3, because pretty much Mario 3 is, with the exception of the Game Boy Advance version, just all gameplay pretty much. You know, you just press start and you get into the first world and start playing the game as well. And the other footage was, of course, from The Wizard, which I've still not seen in its entirety. I've only seen a few select moments from that film, and I knew for years that it featured, that classic Mario 3 reference, including, the whole, before Mario 3 comes out, let's put it in The Wizard, shall we? I am aware that The Wizard is not necessarily a great film, but I'm sure it would be entertaining on some level.
Water, you had desert, the very same theme levels that we see today in Mario games. And
yes, I think, considering the critiques talked about here, there can be a case made that Super Mario Bros. 3 might be among the greatest, or perhaps the greatest Mario game. I mean, I'm more nostalgic for other Mario games, even Mario 64 to a degree. However, Mario Bros. 3, the more I play it, it's easily one of the best games in the series or franchise. And it's also one of the most creative and just overall fun and memorable games in the 2D Marios. So it's a good one. I think I expected fairly early on, especially how much I talked to the communities about their favourite games, even before the showcase was a thing, that Mario 3 was a regular favourite, being streamed and talked about too. I will say though, considering what I was saying before about the community, like in certain games, sometimes, when content creator talks about a game that they liked, I was like, oh, that's got to be on their list. Oh, it isn't. And they might have either forgotten or they like it, but it's not quite top 25 material. Well, as was vaguely talked about in the previous post commentary, and indeed in the live chat and all that stuff, it is hard to choose the games as well. Or, as I was talking about before with Minecraft, when it was swapped out in a tier 1 choice for something else, it was kind of like, oh, I thought that was your favorite game. Oh, I guess you chose Minecraft instead. Oh, no, actually it's this one. It's like I didn't want to prompt anyone for their favorite game, so I was like, hey, no, what about that game? I thought you talked about that a lot. But no, I wanted people to choose the games themselves. It wasn't like I was going to say, hey, no, you talk about that game a lot. I was like, oh, no, I forgot to put that in my list. So, Minecraft, oh, no, it's this game instead. And,
world building. Hell, the new series doesn't even come close.
Slightly debatable perhaps, but that depends on the other Mario games in the top 25.
Super Mario Brothers 3 rode on a lot of hype back in the day, but it's possible its hype doesn't matter.
Oh, the hype back in the day. Yeah, I was kind of alluding to the, the Wizard reference there. And also because Mario was doing well back at that time. But yeah, it's like, Super Mario Bros. 3 and the Wizard. Oh my gosh, Super Mario Bros. 3 looks like an amazing game. And yes, when I talked about the leaked source code for the game at number 12, I think the Premier Live Chat was like, hang on, I think I know what this game this is. Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Oh my gosh, it's Half-Life 2. Spoiler alert, this is the only Half-Life game in the top 25. Half-Life 1, well, if you could call it Half-Life 1, had a really, really good go. It ranked high enough, but it was in the runner-up. And Half-Life Alyx also got a couple of mentions too. But Half-Life 2, which I think is a great game, easily one of my favourite first-person shooter games. Again, I'm not the biggest first-person shooter person. Got into the top 25, and I think it was a very good choice to be in. Now, Half-Life 2, as with just about any PC game I've recorded, was very tricky to record footage for, as you will see in a moment. I recorded it off the Game Bar, which is a default recording software that comes, I think, with Windows 10 and maybe Windows 11. For some reason, I've had a lot of trouble with Game Bar because of this. Yeah, you see, like with the dialogue, it started to sound like it was croaking, like stuttering and stuff. Because for some reason or another, Game Bar, when it records games most of the time, and especially in good quality HD, as you shown here, it has trouble with sound. However, next time I will record Half-Life 2, at least I know a better way to get it to sound better. Even if it means recording the sound channel separately. But will Half-Life 2 get into the top 25 again? Well, top 26, or whatever you want to call it. It's possible. Half-Life 2 is that great of a game. Also, with this segment here, like with the Ravenholm segment and stuff, the Premier Live Chats picked up on the whole, Rise and Shine, Mr. Freeman, and thought it was a bit scary. Half-Life 2, I wouldn't necessarily describe as a scary game. I mean, it's got this whole dystopian setting in Ravenholm and all that. But I was saying the live chats like, oh, Half-Life 2 is not that scary. But hang on, what about the game at number 11? Yeah. Oh wait, game at number 11 is sort of a horror game. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about a non-horror game and then talk about a horror game. And I was like, whoops, I made a little bit of a subjective mistake here.
To mention numerous secrets. Zach confirms how even today Half-Life 2 is still good by finally...
I did also like the critiques for Half-Life 2 here as well.
Also featured Team Fortress 2.
Yeah, but hopefully I could just record it better next time. I wanted to... I think most of the dialogue points, or at least the early dialogue points that I wanted to put in the game had that Game Bar sound problem, unfortunately.
And I'm never going to get bored of replaying this.
And also it was nice to see that it was Friend Remembers a Tier 1 game. As I was saying last week, Tier 1 games were bound to get higher. And yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
Could even be considered a bit scary, but it's not a horror game.
It's not a horror game?
Then again.
Now for game at number 11, I can say that it was amongst the first edits I ever did for the showcase, even though I tried to work on all of the games at once. I will elaborate more on that, of course.
So many other games, and many, myself included.
But yes, I think it was among the first edits because I had all the critiques available for Resident Evil 4. Spoiler alert, this is also the only Resident Evil game in the top 25 as well, but Resident Evil series was also very well represented as well, even as the critiques will say later that Resident Evil 4 was like, hang on, this is so different from the preceding Resident Evil games, I don't like this or whatever. But hey, Resident Evil 4 got number 11, and I thought that was a pretty good position. In fact, I think it was going to get higher as well.
Not consist of the mainstay zombies. No zombies in a Resident Evil game?
Also, the footage here generally comes from the Wii version. Yeah, my Nintendo Wii copy.
I've heard people argue that Resident Evil 4 is responsible for the decline.
Yeah, so as the critique talks about here, so it's like, well, aren't other Resident Evil games better? And maybe other games released after Resident Evil 4 were maybe more divisive or something. Also, I hadn't played Resident Evil 3 and Code Veronica over time, and I thought, oh, I'll just get stills, you know, including, you know, Jill and Claire and their weapons. Whereas pretty much the other Resident Evil games footage comes from me playing those games. So Resident Evil Remake, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 0, and as we will see later, Resident Evil Revelations, which I had streamed on Twitch at the time. That was an interesting time. That was actually a good series of streams. Oh man, the chainsaw and the regenerators. So you can say what you will about Resident Evil 4, but I think if any Resident Evil game was going to get in, even though it's my personal favourite, yeah, it was good that it featured EVA Top 25. Plus, we didn't know, let alone expect at the time, unless there were rumours or something, that there was going to be a remake. Although Resident Evil 2 remake, yeah, I think got a mention as well. You know who you are if you're watching. So I think after Resident Evil 2 remake was made, it was like, oh, Resident Evil 4 3 remake. And now there's Resident Evil 4 remake. Although people are like, where's Resident Evil Code Veronica?
Should be proof that this is a game I'll never get bored of going.
Yes, Resident Evil 4 is very replayable.
Resident Evil 4 as a favorite on his list and on tier 4. He said about
oh yes, yeah, it's interesting. I talk about like the Nintendo reviewers text critique as if it's my first time talking about it, or the first time I was recording it. Because when I looked at like, oh, Mario Kart 8, well, that's the first time we see a Nintendo reviewer text critique. Well, it's the first time I read off his critiques as well. It was an interesting process, editing all 3 episodes at once. Even though but mostly all at once, and I did Bloodborne at the end, my gosh. Maybe Dark Souls as well, but yeah.
Is a different yet stellar chapter in Resident Evil history.
Okay, it's game time.
Oh yes, that's a pretty good edit right there. Hey, it's a troll from Lord of the Rings.
Whether other Resident Evil games going to the showcase?
The game at number 10, I think for a little bit of time was in the top 5, or maybe at least number 1, but it got enough votes, and then more and more games ranked higher and higher than the game at number 10. Oh yes, I'm alluding to Persona 4, which came at number 19. Yes, yeah, number 10 is of course Persona 5 / Persona 5 Royal. Again, Persona 5 Royal is an expansion, and so I included it as one entry. Although some people did, I think, choose just Persona 5 as its own game as well. Also, I think Mykanoid had said right before that dialogue, well, it's no secret I like JRPGs. Well, yeah, if I was going to do the whole lists thing. Again, all of this footage pretty much comes from me playing Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, or what I'd played at Persona 5 Royal over time, because I completed Persona 5 at the time. Interestingly enough, all the Persona 5 footage comes from my review, except when I looked through my backlog of footage from a very extensive footage log and tried to choose select moments, such as the Space Palace and stuff coming up. But yeah, Persona 5, well, it's one of my favourite games. Even though in the Persona fandom, or maybe indeed gaming fandoms in general, it might be a somewhat divisive game. Like, Persona 5 is a great game, but it's not that great. What about Persona 4, Persona 3, this game, or that game, Shin Megami Tensei? But based on, it is really a good game, and I do like it, so I have no issues whatsoever with ranking as high as it is. Maybe it could have been ranked higher, who knows?
My favorite piece of art of a game is...
And come on, how can you disagree with the visuals and sound of a gameplay? It's great. The critiques say so.
Everything with this entry. As Joker's speed is really good, the game feels like an open world, the battle commands are mapped to one...
It also, speaking of Mykanoids, and even Joker's inclusions to an extent, you do notice that Mykanoids had a lot of games represented in the showcase. And to a small extent, I almost don't know why. I mean, it's a great list, absolutely, but it's like, hang on. This game he chose had other people liking it. This game he chose had other people liking it. I guess it just goes to show that some games, you know, had a lot of mentions. I will talk in the next episode about, you know, the lists that didn't get in as well as other interesting, you know, rankings, because like I said, Minecraft got ranked lower, Dark Souls got ranked higher, you know, due to some mostly last minute mentions. That will become very prevalent in the top 5 games as well.
On the existing story and additional quality of
but yeah, editing Persona 5 was mostly no problem, as was Mario Brothers 3, Half-Life 2 outside the game bar, and Resident Evil 4. It's just as well I had completed the game or used my extensive footage log.
Really good idea, and it fits the game's style and story.
And it also does have great music, like Beneath the Mask. Oh yes, I think, well, it is a somewhat recent game, but I wanted to include spoilers, you know, for the whole, you know, just in case people haven't played it. Like, what is that big gold thing there, huh? But yeah, and also, that accompanied, you know, Rivers of the Desert, which is a great song. But yeah, if you haven't played Persona 5, which was technically my first Persona game, do give it a shot. Just be prepared for how much time you have to commit to it, and analyze the gameplay closely, and be prepared that it might take a while to build, and you might actually enjoy it. You can actually see what I mean by the spoilers later on. I mean, that spoiler right there comes more so from towards the end of the game, but maybe exactly who was critiquing the game there could have referred to a moment revealed after the, is it the 6th or 7th dungeon? But anyway, there was a moment like earlier before that ending section where it seemed like something bad was happening to one of the characters, and it turns out, oh, it hasn't. But I chose that moment there as well. Persona 5 fans in the comments, let me know which 2 moments, well, actually, no, you cannot talk about. Also, yeah. Oh my gosh. Talking about the lead up to game number 9. There was at this moment, some neighbors moving in or moving things around and stuff, and they just would not stop making noise. And in contrast to the helicopters and birds filmed the previous episode, I thought, well, should we just wait for them? Well, it looks like they're not going to stop. We'll wait a few minutes. We'll just talk. I'll just talk while they're talking, and I'll have a disclaimer on the footage. Apparently, one of my family members found it funny that I just simply said, hey, the neighbors won't shut up. And as I say in the bloopers in the next episode, well, it's like, well, yeah, the neighbors can talk about Zelda Breath of the Wild. Sure, why not? Also, this is the first time we're seeing a Legend of Zelda game in the series. It's a bit surreal right now in 2023, looking back at this game. You know, this game that changed the Zelda series and stuff around a fair bit. And that we wouldn't expect at the time what Tears of the Kingdom was going to be like. I mean, we knew a sequel was coming, which, as I say, the end of the critique. I do like the critiques in this game. Although there was one small problem while editing the Breath of the Wild segment, that, like I said in one of my most recent Viddyos on my channel, where I talk about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I hadn't used my capture device over time, or at least got one, and I wish I could have recorded my first playthrough of the game, like what ended up happening with Tears of the Kingdom, and, you know, like, I ended up using Snowman gameplay footage again, just to look at other segments of parts of the game that I hadn't done yet or seen. Like yes, of course, like I wanted to, you know, show things off, such as the dragon, and this bit right here with the minecart, because I hadn't recorded this part of the world yet in my second playthrough of the game as well. And even Myconoids contributed to it as well, with a shrine. And yeah, Breath of the Wild, well, it was, and I say it still is, a great game.
Immediately.
maybe somewhat divisive to a degree, like, oh, it's a great game, but it's not a Legend of Zelda game or something. Look, I could talk all day about what I think about Breath of the Wild, and maybe I might allude to it more in my Tears of the Kingdom review that's still currently in the works, but I think Breath of the Wild is one of my favourite games. And maybe past tense, it probably was one of my favourite games. I still haven't decided yet. But Breath of the Wild, I think, is a great game, and I'm happy to see it represented in the top 25, even if I did figure that, hang on, Breath of the Wild is an overrated game or something. But it goes to show that some of the discourse surrounding Breath of the Wild, well, at least for the top 25, was actually quite positive. But yeah, it was also probably one of the biggest games of the showcase that I couldn't talk about it for 3 hours like Arlo there did in his review.
It's a simple game.
I should have had an extended cut for a showcase, a 3 hours, segment to Breath of the Wild, and 3 hours each for each of the other games. Mind you, this is a long segment anyway as well.
That I can say that you probably don't already know. About 94%.
Retro did sort of talk about this game as if he was talking about the list, generally speaking, but I thought this was a good lead-in to Super Mario World. So, Super Mario World was one of my favourite segments to edit, or at least it was the most special one for one simple reason. When Eagle Eye, as heard there, locked in his list, close to the deadline, I guess, and I talked with him over Skype to record his voiceover critiques for his list, which of course featured Super Mario World. And after I finished recording his voiceover over Skype, I recorded a moment we're about to see, something he thought about the game, and it was in this moment that I felt extremely giddy. I kid you not. What I mean by that is that after, doing all the research and collecting all the lists of critiques and that, and, going on my Excel spreadsheets and looking about what games are high ranking that, it was in this moment, oh no, not here, sorry. It was in the upcoming Eagle Eye moment that I put in a couple of moments of Super Mario World footage underneath his voice, and I was like, wow, this collab idea is fantastic. This is so watchable. This is going to be really lots of fun. A lot of work, sure, but it's going to be so much fun. I was just so excited. I was like shaking and trembling. So I think it's in this moment right here, when Eagle Eye talks about Yoshi, pretty much.
Being able to shoot fire, that was such a cool element of the game. And then in Super Mario,
this one here,
all of a sudden you can ride a dice.
Yeah, so when he was talking about Yoshi, and I recorded a couple of Yoshi moments under his voiceover, I was like, this is going to be one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on. It's going to be so much fun, and if it's generally going to sort of work like this, as far as the collab goes, I think people will enjoy this, and by general extension they did. Including the game choices like Super Mario World, which beat out Super Mario Bros. 3. Based on my nostalgia, that's my preference. But people are like, Super Mario Bros. 3 is better. And to an extent it is. But Super Mario World is one of my favourite games, and I think it got a pretty good position, and it's a great 2D Mario game. Also, Micronoid, again, has some footage of its own, mainly from the first level in the Vanilla Dome, the third world of the game.
That's what makes it a cool game.
And even after I had passed the game multiple times, I came back later and had discovered things like the Star World and the Secret World.
I don't know if kids nowadays will be able
Yeah, well, I put in some Secret World footage there underneath Micronoid's voice as well. And also Retro Room has some great critiques as well, which I will admit culminated in a good edit at the end here, like when Retro Room, talks about, wow, how great of a game it is, and then, whoosh, at the end of a level.
With the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, then you've played Super Mario World. It's simple. And
yes, memories of playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo as a early 90s kid.
World on your SNES, Game Boy Advance, Virtual Consoles, the SNES Classic, Switch, emulation,
This game is a must-play.
It was a game.
There are many must-play games on your list, Mike and Noid, and that goes for everyone else's as well. I think overall the top 25 was a good list of games. And I can already say, considering what I was talking about earlier in this commentary, what the showcasing will be like, where there will be some returning games, but also some new ones. If you still have your favourites, do not change them, unless your tastes have changed.
But that is not necessarily a bad thing. Right?
Oh yes, we're going for something more story-driven for game at number 7. And as I'm talking about the hosting segment, this one was really hard to edit because all the critiques that I did get for this were text-based. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, what do I do? So how I figured I'd structure this one was sort of do my own intro and stuff, then do a text critique followed purely by a gameplay moment, and then another text critique, and then another gameplay critique, which was of course for The Last of Us. This was a game I sort of did not expect to get in, or at least, I don't know, like maybe some people were like, why do people like this game so much to a degree? But apparently people still do like this game. They got into number 7. The Last of Us, I do like the game, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it one of my favourites. So maybe that's why I'm like, what's this game doing at number 7? However, I still am happy that this game got in, and I do like that people like this game. I just wish that all the voiceovers in this critique didn't have to come from me. I also kind of thinking Last of Us may have got higher because Last of Us Part 2 had come out about a year earlier this time, and that had a pretty divisive reaction, which made people probably go back to this game and go, yeah, I don't like Last of Us Part 2, but this game is great. I do vaguely allude to Last of Us Part 2 in this moment here. For those of you who play the game may know what I'm talking about. And also the live chat did pick up on the fact that we would of course begin the TV series of this game. And I like the series. I'll just say that much. So yeah, as you can see here, just pure gameplay or a cutscene in between each text critique. Because I figured, well, I'm not going to have me just talking.
I think that's really neat because actually getting punched to the gut can make you feel really rough, but this just makes you...
Also, I still haven't not actually played Last of Us Part 2. I just vaguely know of its story. Whoops. Also, while editing this segment, this came from the last time I had only played the game at this time, which was in 2019, and I was looking through my gameplay, and especially the cutscenes, and I will admit, looking at the cutscenes did actually get fairly emotional, because easily one of my favourite things about this game was its story. And the cutscenes, including this one here, just got some emotions out of me after having not played the game for about 2 years at the time. Like I actually got a bit emotional, which segued into the hosting segment in the lead up to game number 6. Language, Ellie. This is a family-friendly showcase. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, the cutscenes did get me welling up a little bit. Like, even when I did the hosting segment, I was just thinking of the last cutscene that you will see at the end of the segment here. And it still gets me just a little bit teary-eyed as well. If you're going to play Last of Us, at least play for its story. Mind you, I do kind of suck at the gameplay a bit. Maybe that's why I don't like it as much. Or it's the sort of gameplay that I don't necessarily vibe with. But the gameplay is good. But the story and, its presentation and stuff, oh, so good. I think this is almost like peak Naughty Dog, although some people might say, other Naughty Dog games are better. So yeah, this cutscene here. Like, hang on, I'll try not to get my tears in this commentary. Dana, Joe, and Ellie, I cannot. Okay, I've got to compose myself here because we're getting towards the end of this post-commentary here. And we will have some interesting things to talk about in the top 5 and the editing and stuff. I will say right here, although I'm going to do a quick video right after this, the credits sequence for Part 3 is quite long, so I'll say right here that you can post maybe underneath this video or at least in a reminder video. I want you people to submit your questions about the showcase, the making of it and stuff, so I can answer your questions in the long credit sequence. So, number 6 is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, ranked above Breath of the Wild. There are no Zelda games in the top 5. I had a feeling that Ocarina of Time was getting to the top 25 no matter what, but as I would talk about, to leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger, this game was going to get into the top 5 as well, but that also got changed. Editing this segment was hard well, this is purely subjective, but I was editing the Ocarina of Time segment close to the end on the editing of part 2 of the series, and I was struggling with a Bloodborne segment, which meant that even though I had mostly scripted, the Ocarina of Time segment, I was getting a bit more burnt out of this time, and this is just my opinion, but I think my burnout somehow came across in my somewhat more flat voice over here. I mean, look, it's not bad, and you can maybe agree with me on that one, but I just thought my voiceover gave off vibes of like that I was getting pretty tired. But even so, the Smith segment's still fine, in terms of what I was talking about the game, and the critiques as well. In fact, Michael Mick's critique that is at the end of the segment is a really lovely thing to say about how his father, watched him playing it, and I think that's really lovely. And Ocarina of Time, well, it's one of my top games ever. Some people might look at this game and go, why is this a masterpiece? I don't get it. What about Link to the Past? What about this other game? And even as, others will say oh, well, I chose one game per franchise, which wasn't a requirement, just a deliberate choice by viewers, by participants and all that. And I think someone was like, maybe I'll put in Ocarina of Time. Oh, no, I'll choose another Zelda game. But I think if there was going to be a high-ranking Zelda game, it had to be Ocarina of Time because it is really that good of a game, including, of course, its music. But yeah, I think this is where I'll have to rely on your Q&As, people, because, I mean, I've talked about the editing a fair bit as well. And yeah, what else can I talk about? I mean, I've certainly talked about the opinions as well. And yeah, I mean, do I wish that Ocarina of Time was in the top 5? Well, for my personal list, yes. I mean, it's probably my second or third favourite game of all time. And I even did a Viddy plays of it, got to shout out that one too. But I think, to represent the overall collab, 6 is a pretty good position for it. And Ziada has some good critiques here too. Good old Cat in the Box. I think Ziada also chose Link to the Past, and maybe one or two other Zelda games, but mainly Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. Link to the Past also made a pretty darn good go. I think it was the third highest ranking Zelda game behind Breath of the Wild. And I almost thought Link to the Past was going to get into the top 25 as well. Also, at this time, I hadn't completed another playthrough of Ocarina of Time, so I included whatever footage I could. Recorded off the Virtual Console, because I don't necessarily have my own Nintendo 64 copy. Whoops. But I did borrow someone's Nintendo 64 copy and played it all the way through, and that's how it became one of my favourite games ever. And indeed, my favourite Zelda game too. I mean, other Zelda games like Majora's Mask, my first Zelda game, and Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom now, Link to the Past and all that stuff certainly tried to dethrone Ocarina of Time, but just somehow, it's always Ocarina. I still find it fun even to this day. And that, of course, leads me on to you guys in the comments, going back to when this showcase was shown, and even right now in the post-commentary about what you think of the game so far. But the top 5 will have a interesting opinions one, as well as, how the editing was made as well, because I did suffer through quite a bit of burnout towards the end of the part 2 editing, and especially during part 3, but I was still happy with how the showcase turned out, including, of course, to, reference Ocarina of Time, let's have a Gerudo Valley music. It's upbeat, and it's a great way to end episode 2. But yes, so have a good day or night, whatever it is, everyone. I also hope you'll be enjoying rediscovering the showcase with me. Why would you be discovering the showcase? I have no idea, but no, it's okay. Thank you again to everyone who took part in the showcase, with your lists and all that, and to Mike Annoyed, Nintendo Reviewer, and Snowman Gameplay for your footage. And also, the comments in episode 1's post-commentary were good as well. Top 5 will be interesting, but don't forget to submit your questions either below this video or the quick reminder video I'll have coming up. Like I already said, have a good day or night whenever it is, and I will see you next week. Got some more videos to work on, not just the post-commentary showcase videos. Goodbye. Gosh, this has been a great rediscovery, hasn't it?